everyone. I'm Holly Stomberg with the Success Home Team of Keller Williams Integrity Realty, and we are back with Rachel Schromen, estate planning attorney, owner of Schromen Law. Rachel, I so love doing these with you, and you and I have had the conversation about when people purchase a home jointly with someone who is a significant other or their fiance, but they maybe don't have a legal, like they're not married, they don't have that connection. When we have this happen, people often ask me, is there anything they need to consider as they're entering into purchasing a home legally before they purchase?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Holly, and something that often is overlooked. So in modern times now, it's far more common than it used to be for couples to live together prior to marriage. And as I'm sure you're seeing, even more couples are buying homes together and purchasing property before they're married. As you know, my husband and I purchased our home together about 6 months before our wedding. So where the risk lies with this is the lack of law that steps in should a relationship dissolve. So in Minnesota, if there's a divorce, we have a divorce process and divorce laws that guide the process and protect legal marital interests, etc. But when couples are not legally married, there isn't any law there. There isn't that guiding process, and it can get really, really messy when they own property together.
Yeah, I've seen situations like that, and it can be so unpleasant. What can people do then?
There's a few ways to approach this in terms of having protection. It's important that couples consult with an attorney because what protection fits best can be very, very fact specific. You know, for example, who's going on the deed? Is it one party or both? Who's making financial contributions? Who's going to be on the mortgage, etc. One great option, though, is what's called a cohabitation agreement. So a cohabitation agreement is a contract that can be compared to a prenuptial agreement. Only marriage isn't required, and it largely usually only pertains to the property and the living arrangement. It can address things like equity in the home, how expenses are being shared, and what would happen if there's an event of if there's a breakup. So I'll give an example. I worked with a couple once who were purchasing a home together. They were dating, no intentions of getting married, and they made the choice to buy a home when they moved in together because it was a good financial investment for them at the time. This was a opposite sex couple, so there was girlfriend, boyfriend. Girlfriend was putting down about 75% of the down payment. Oh. She was the only name going on the mortgage, and subsequently was also the only one going on the deed. Now, her boyfriend was putting down 25% of the down payment. He had had a prior divorce, which impacted his credit, which was the reason he wasn't going to be on the mortgage or anything. So these are all like financial kind of best interest decisions that I'm sure you see being commonly made. So he put down the 25%. While he was living with his girlfriend, he was going to be paying, you know, half of the mortgage, half of improvements to the property, half of the expenses. Okay. So their realtor referred them to me and said, you know, just talk to Rachel, see if there's anything you should be thinking about. Now, without any other sort of, you know, without a cohabitation agreement, how that was really set up was if they broke up, that's girlfriend's house. Mm-hmm. He's living in it. And for all intents and purposes, the half of the mortgage he's paying is rent. So he would have no legal right to recover that. Potential litigation, could he? Sure, maybe. But either way, you know, it's a big risk, a big liability for him. So they were able to, what they did was they put together a cohabitation agreement where it protected the equity that he put in. So the 25% of the down payment that he paid was protected as his. It could be recovered if they broke up. If he was paying half that mortgage, that created equity. The cohabitation agreement said that that would be something he'd be able to recover. It protected their financial investment in the property. Further than that, it set up guidance for what would happen if they broke up. So for example, what they agreed to was if they were to break up, if they were to break up, there was a process by which what period of time the party who's moving out would need to move out for. Up until the time that party moved out, they were still on the hook, for lack of a better term, for their half of the expenses, their half of the mortgage. In this specific instance, girlfriend wanted right of first refusal. So she had the option to purchase the home, paying him the equity, etc. It laid that out. And what that, aims to create is a plan, a procedure to make that sequence of events as seamless as possible and minimize exposure and risk.
When do people get started on this, and how can they so if they're looking at houses now, or they're thinking about that, do they wait until they have an accepted purchase agreement, or is this something they should talk with you about before that?
It's a good conversation to start right when you start looking. Okay. Because sometimes these conversations take a little while. There's different topics, different points to just kind of be fleshed out and worked out. That being said, a cohabitation agreement will more often than not reference the specific property. It'll reference specific dollar amounts, for contributions, but you want that signed before the closing. So okay. When parties start looking for properties, maybe they're just starting a process. Obviously, they don't have any offers in or anything. Good time to start the conversation. Once that offer is put in and accepted, that's when details start getting nailed down. You want to sign that before you go close on the house. Just like, to use the analogy, the similarity to a prenuptial agreement, you sign that before the date of the marriage. You sign a cohabitation agreement before you buy the house.
Before you cohabitate.
Yeah, you got it.
What's the best way for people to reach you if they have more questions about this and ways that they can protect themselves surrounding cohabitation? This is such amazing info that I want them to be able to reach out to you. What's a good way for them to do that?
People can call me directly at 651-571-2515. And I can also be reached through my website. It's schromenlaw.com. That's SCHROMENLAW.com.
Rachel, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.